Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this point, you could feel the air around Zayayozi was warm, incredibly warm, a stark contrast to the icy landscape surrounding them. Take my advice, stop killing. Zayayozi shook his head at Emperor Shutian. He stood up, brushed the dust off his robe, and said calmly, "Too much evil, and you'll face divine punishment. I hope you'll reconsider. Have mercy, show compassion." He spoke slowly, almost chattily, with a compassionate look that made him seem more like a monk than a Taoist. "Ha! I don't believe in any gods." Emperor Shutian glared at Zayayozi, anger bubbling up inside him. "Today, I'm taking your life, no matter who you are." Boom, star. With that, Emperor Shutian stepped forward, and thousands of blades materialized before him, a palpable murderous intent rising into the sky. They weren't actually blades, but ice, water vapor in the air, shaped into blades by Emperor Shutian's immense power. Even through the Tiandao Golden List, everyone in Jojo could feel the biting chill radiating from the ice blades, as sharp and deadly as any master craftsman's sword. "Thousand-blade sky strike!" Emperor Shutian roared, and the thousands of ice blades surged toward Zayayozi like a torrential downpour. Sunlight glinted off the ice, creating a beautiful, rainbow-colored effect, but everyone knew that beauty masked deadly intent. The ice blades rained down, boom, star. The endless icy points, like grim reapers, unleashed destruction. The Tianmen gate was instantly obliterated. Next, the top step crumbled into dust under the onslaught. Layer by layer, the destruction moved towards the Taoist. "Guess you're not listening." Seeing the wall of ice flying towards him, the old Taoist looked even more helpless. He picked at his ear, flicked away some debris, took a deep breath, and muttered, "Fine. Then let me persuade you." Before anyone in Jojo could react, there was a flash. A blurry figure shot upwards. What was that? Everyone was stunned, even Emperor Shutian hesitated, a flicker of danger in his eyes. He wanted to dodge, but couldn't find his footing in mid-air. Then, the blurry figure became clear: Zayayozi. Everyone in Jojo was speechless. He'd leapt into the air the instant the ice shattered the steps beneath him. With impossible speed, he was in front of Emperor Shutian. The Grand Master hadn't even reacted. Or, he'd reacted, but too late to do anything. "Let me teach you a lesson." Zayayozi looked at Emperor Shutian, casually raised a fist, and tapped him lightly. One punch. Boom! The area where Emperor Shutian was struck imploded, leaving a crater behind him. Then, after hanging in the air for a moment, he was sent hurtling towards the ground. Bang! He crashed through Tianmen palaces, demolishing them one after another. Finally, he slammed into a huge rock and stopped. Silence. Everyone stared, dumbfounded by Zayayozi's punch. It was just a punch, no chi, no magical powers, just an ordinary punch that sent the great Emperor Shutian flying, coughing up blood. How is this possible? People across Jojo cried out in disbelief. Taoists practiced swords, magic, mental discipline. They might have powerful moves, or powerful chi, but no one had ever heard of a Taoist who focused on physical training. This Taoist, Zayayozi, looked the picture of serenity and wisdom, not like some muscle-bound strongman. How could he unleash such devastating power? Emperor Shutian's heart was filled with horror. That blow had nearly destroyed his internal organs, leaving him suffocated and close to death. It had been so long. Since taking the phoenix blood, he hadn't felt pain like this. Normally, any injury would instantly heal thanks to the phoenix blood. He'd almost forgotten what pain felt like. But that feeling of suffocation, it had been terrifying. A rage, 100 times stronger than before, surged through him. He, Emperor Shutian, an immortal being. How could he be defeated by some old Taoist? Boom! Driven by his rage and the phoenix blood, the injuries that would have killed any other Grand Master began to heal. Almost instantly, he was as good as new. Zayayozi frowned, a hint of surprise on his face. The phoenix blood's recovery speed seemed a little too fast. Chapter 83 Peak Battle. Changes in the Heavenly Dao Golden List. Everyone in Jojo was also stunned, watching Emperor Shutian recover so quickly. In the previous scenes from the Heavenly Tao Golden List, Emperor Shitian's phoenix blood had allowed him to heal from injuries, but even he needed time to recover from serious wounds. After all, Su Fu had been wandering around for 2,000 years, he'd taken some serious beatings along the way, natural disasters, mostly. But sometimes, he was simply outmatched. A few hundred years back, he'd been severely injured by a man named Wu Wudi and forced to flee. Even the phoenix blood couldn't instantly heal him then. Emperor Shitian had spent a fortune and a long time to recover. Now, although his injuries weren't as bad, they were still significant. He should need at least an hour to recover. But he was healing in moments. Asterisk phoenix blood. The thought flashed through everyone's minds. Was this the true power of the phoenix blood, now that its drawbacks had been removed? Everyone had assumed that heaven's blessing would simply restore Emperor Shitian's youth. Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But wow, turns out it's way more than that. Its resilience is off the charts now. This Emperor Shitian might actually be indestructible. Ha! I am, immortal, Tianmen, staring down at Zaya. Emperor Shitian brushed himself off, slowly stood up, and said coldly, the blood splattered on him was sucked right back into his body, if it weren't for the tears in his clothes, he'd look good as new. Guess I underestimated that phoenix blood, old Taoist. Hearing this, Zayayozi's face turned serious, and he said in a deep voice. But claiming to be immortal? That's a bit much, don't you think? Honestly, Emperor Shitian's power wasn't enough to really worry him, still, that phoenix blood's healing speed was insane. Zayayozi figured that even if Emperor Shitian could recover from his punch, it would take 15 minutes or so, and he could get a lot done in 15 minutes, like sealing Emperor Shitian away. But now, things were getting complicated. Looks like this old Taoist is gonna have to stretch his legs a bit this time. Shaking his head, Zayayozi sighed, his eyes hardening slightly. De Qin Zhangtai Palace. Think Emperor Shitian can take that Taoist? Yingyun looked up at the sky, watching the showdown, and murmured softly, Phoenix Blood's recovery is just too damn fast. Yingyun originally thought Zayayozi would easily crush Emperor Shitian, and that first punch sure felt devastating. But seeing Emperor Shitian's insane resilience, Yingyun wasn't so sure anymore. Well. Hearing this, Guy frowned, a serious look on his face. After a long pause, he slowly shook his head, sighed, and said. I don't know. As a master swordsman, Guy saw things Yingyun didn't, like how Emperor Shitian's breathing barely changed. Meaning the serious injury hardly drained him at all. Feng Shui's ability completely took over, healing him on its own. That's terrifying. Once or twice, okay, whatever. But if it goes on like this, fighting an opponent whose stamina barely drops. Unless you can completely obliterate him instantly, he could make a comeback. Plus, looking at Zayayozi, he seemed hale and hearty, almost immortal. But let's face it, the guy's getting old. When anyone in Kyushu gets old, their power and energy decline. With this advantage swinging back and forth, the final outcome is anybody's guess. Oh, to be young again. From a distance, seeing Yingyun and Guy craning their necks to stare at the sky, clearly unwilling to look away as they were talking, Yingyun couldn't help but feel a trace of disdain. Can't win. No way. He could immediately see Zayayozi's level. Top-tier Grandmaster. And a Grandmaster practically at the land god level, such strength was pretty basic in Yingyun's eyes. As a true land god, he naturally looked down on someone who hadn't even reached the land god threshold, but for Kyushu, this guy was unbelievable. Way beyond a Grandmaster. Grandmasters are just mortals. But land gods have opened the door to a whole new world. Their minds and power are beyond mortal reach. Not quite a god. But mortals can't even touch them. No matter how strong Emperor Shitian is, no matter how crazy his phoenix blood is, he's still a mortal. Compared to Zayayozi, who's glimpsed something higher, he can't compare. But thanks to that phoenix blood, Su Fu got a leg up. This fight will probably take a while. But just as Yingyun was settling in to watch, he frowned, surprised. Another change on the Heavenly Dao Golden List. Boom! The scene of Emperor Shitian fighting Zaiyozi flickered, split by something, and blurred. The whole of Kyushu noticed this. The battle between Zaiyozi and Emperor Shitian was just starting, and everyone wanted to know how it ended. So everyone would be bummed if the Golden List cut away now. And it wasn't just Kyushu's citizens, even Zaiyozi and Emperor Shitian frowned, puzzled by the change. What's happening? Zaiyozi looked up, a hint of doubt in his eyes. Is it time to reveal the top 3 on the peerless list? But why is this different than before? Chapter 84 Heavenly Dao Battlefield. Zaiyozi's confidence, endless ripples spread across the sky. The Heavenly Dao Golden List was changing again. Boom! Golden light filled the sky, turning even the earth gold, shocking. Even Emperor Shitian and Zaiyozi were stunned by this sudden spectacle. What is this? Staring at the overwhelming golden light, Emperor Shitian muttered, confused, the 3rd place on the peerless list shouldn't be like this. Boom! The golden light continued to surge, the vast energy resonated across Kyushu. Everyone in Jojo stared at the golden list, solemn. Why was the Heavenly Dao Golden List doing this? Han, Weiyang Palace, Lu Bang stared up at the rippling golden light, condensing in the void like a golden sun. He couldn't help but yell. Wait, what the heck is that? Daming, Forbidden City. Looks like words. Zhu Yuanzhang took a deep breath, his eyes straining as he stared at the void, afraid to miss a thing. Qin Dynasty, Li Shimin clenched his fists. Emperor Shitian and Zaiyozi's battle and the Heavenly Dao Golden List's transformation shocked the young emperor. Now he needed to know why the Heavenly Dao Golden List was doing this. Time passed, the golden light over the 9 provinces merged, forming edges and corners, then, it became 4 big words. Heavenly Battlefield. 4 huge golden characters hovered in the sky, radiating golden light. Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even the sun seemed dimmer, its light somehow muted. What was that? The whole of Jojo was stunned by those 4 words, reeling in confusion. Battlefield, surely it had to do with fighting, right? Then, as everyone hesitated, the majestic voice of the Heavenly Dao boomed in their ears. Gold List announcements are complete. If you're not happy, you can enter the Heavenly Dao Battlefield. Fair fight. Win. Rank improved. Receive a 2nd Heavenly Dao blessing. Lose. Rank unchanged. Heavenly Dao blessing nullified. Boom. The booming voice echoed across every corner of Jojo. At the same time, the 4 words Heavenly Dao Battlefield erupted with golden light once more, dominating the sky. The faint sound of war drums rumbled in the distance, like a battlefield from ancient times. A ferocious intent to kill was revealed before their eyes. This is, the Heavenly Dao Battlefield. Hearing the Heavenly Dao Golden List, almost everyone was stunned, wearing an expression of disbelief. Why? Why was this Heavenly Dao Battlefield appearing now? This had never happened during the previous rankings. Could it be that Emperor Shitian's questioning of the Golden List and his fight with Zaiyozi had angered the Heavenly Dao? Was this the Heavenly Dao Golden List's response, bringing down this unexpected event? If there was a question, then why not wait until the Peerless List was done and then have it out fairly? Or had the Heavenly Dao Golden List always planned to open the battlefield, and it just happened to be now? But the most shocking part was the consequences of winning or losing. Winning meant a 2nd Heavenly Dao blessing. That was definitely exciting. Everyone in Jojo knew the power of a heavenly blessing. A 2nd one was something they couldn't even imagine. The fate of a loser was also miserable. Blessing nullified. Did that mean that after finally getting on the list, your abilities were laid bare for everyone in Jojo to see, and you got nothing in return? What's worse, some things, once you have them, are impossible to give up. For example, restoring Su Fu to his old self would be worse than death. This heavenly battlefield definitely had its pros and cons. Wait. Would this heavenly battlefield be open from now on? A serious realization struck them: this heavenly golden list wasn't just the peerless list. What about the divine army list? The major dynasties in Jojo had already noticed the divine army list. There were countless dynasties in Jojo. And countless armies that could be called divine. The 5 supreme dynasties, with their foundations, were terrifying. Armies were the bedrock of any dynasty's power. Even the strongest person could die in a military formation. There were probably hundreds of divine armies in Jojo. No one knew how the golden list would rank them, but someone was bound to disagree. The heavenly Tao's blessing was too tempting. This heavenly Tao battlefield could play a crucial role. Thinking this, many emperors in Jojo fell silent. The peerless list mostly ranked martial arts masters. It had little impact on a dynasty's power. At most, it was a matter of guarding against assassins. But troop deployments were crucial, even an obsession, for every emperor. When the divine army ranking appeared, a bloody storm was brewing. Tianmen, Emperor Shi Tian was silent too. He knew Xiaozi would be on the list, he just didn't know where. Humph. I'll fight you again after the list is done. That he didn't attack, but stared at Xiaozi in the distance. The appearance of the Tiandao battlefield changed things. He wanted a real fight so 9 provinces would know how strong Emperor Shi Tian was. Mercy. Mercy. Xiaozi shook his head, turned serious, and said. I'm afraid you won't want to fight me then. His voice was slow and deliberate. It wasn't loud, but it made Emperor Shi Tian even angrier. The Heavenly Tao Golden List captured this. Even though the Heavenly Tao battlefield made it slightly blurry, the conversation was crystal clear. Arrogant. The first thought on everyone's mind was that he was arrogant. Too arrogant. Chapter 85, third on the peerless list. Xiaozi's words echoed across 9 provinces. Everyone thought he was arrogant. They had seen how quickly Emperor Shi Tian healed using phoenix blood. Xiaozi was powerful. But Emperor Shi Tian had a chance. If Xiaozi said this after receiving the heavenly blessing, it would be understandable. No one knew what kind of blessing Xiaozi would get. Maybe it would boost his combat power. Or give him something like the sweeping monk had, but Xiaozi spoke before that, and it was clear he was confident. Mercy. Xiaozi didn't care what others thought. He yawned, lay on the steps, and looked at the sky. He was waiting. Waiting for the 3rd place on the peerless list to appear. I wonder where I'll rank with my strength. Muttering, Xiaozi touched his waist and pulled out a small wine gourd. He was about to open it when he realized it was empty. He looked up at Emperor Shi Tian and said. Got any wine? You. Emperor Shi Tian saw Xiaozi's casual look and felt anger rising. He almost used the Sacred Heart technique again. But he was afraid. Emperor Shi Tian thought that the Heavenly Tao Golden List had announced the Heavenly Tao battlefield when he was about to fight Xiaozi. Was that a warning? Creatures on the peerless list couldn't fight to the death without authorization, unless it was in the Heavenly Tao battlefield. There was no proof. But Emperor Shi Tian was haunted by a shadow. That was why he had held back. Emperor Shi Tian thought he was arrogant, but not as arrogant as the Heavenly Tao. But now, he wanted to fight Xiaozi. It was infuriating. How dare he ignore him like that? What? Xiaozi saw Emperor Shi Tian's red face and looked confused. Such a big heavenly gate and no wine. How shabby is that? Hey! Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'd rather drink my own. But with that, Xiaozi pulled another small wine bottle from his waist like a magician. This little flask looked way fancier than that gourd he had before. Then, Xiaozi sprawled on the steps of Tianmen, taking little sips, squinting right in Emperor Shi Tian's face as the dude was about to blow a fuse. He looked so chill. If I chicken out after the gold list is done, I'll stay locked up in Tianmen forever. Seeing Zhao acting like that, Emperor Shutian couldn't hide his anger anymore and snapped. Did he really think Zhao would be too scared to fight after seeing what he'd been through? Okay. 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 Hearing Emperor Shutian, Zhao, sprawled out on the steps, looked a little flushed from the booze. He said okay twice, then suddenly stopped and sighed. Now that's a drink. Back in Kyushu, as the words Tiandao battlefield vanished, everyone saw the scene above Tianmen again. But seeing Zhao just lying there so carefree, they were speechless. Did Zhao really not take Emperor Shutian seriously? Facing a Grand Master, he could still be so cool and collected. People didn't know what to say. Still, when they remembered Zhao's earlier punch, they felt a little better. Maybe that's just what confidence looks like when you're a Grand Master. Humph. Up at Tianmen, Emperor Shutian saw Zhao still sprawled out like he didn't give a damn, and he snorted. Then he zipped up and sat on a huge rock at the top of Tianmen. He quietly gazed up at the sky. At the same time, countless people in Jojo also looked skyward. Swing, star, the picture from Tianmen flickered, and finally, stabilized. Huh. Everyone was stunned. Their eyes went straight back to the steps, where that dude was squinting like he was about to fall asleep. Was this number 3 on the peerless list? At first, everyone had been trying to guess what kind of beings could even crack the top 3 on that list. Su Fu's strength alone was mind-blowing. And Zhao just took it to a whole new level. I mean, how many Grandmasters can you name who are savage enough to knock someone of the same level into throwing up blood with a single punch? If it hadn't been for Feng Shui, Su Fu would have been seriously messed up by that hit. Boom! Just when all of Kyushu was buzzing, a booming voice echoed in everyone's ears. Third on the peerless list, Xiaoyao Sex, Zhao. Realm, Grandmaster Peak. Achievements, a happy life. Endless golden light poured onto Tianmen again. And, maybe it was just their imagination, but the golden light seemed way brighter than before, almost lighting up half the sky. Totally dazzling. But everyone in Jojo was too busy to care. Zhao, really him? Everyone had been betting on where Zhao would land on the peerless list. He hadn't shown off any fancy moves, but his physique was insane. They figured he had to be a Grand Master who specialized in body training, otherwise, how else could he beat Su Fu like that with one punch? The reason he looked so skinny was probably because he'd simplified everything. He didn't need muscles to prove his strength. It might involve some Grand Master secrets. Of course, these were just guesses, but now, with the Tiandao Golden List revealed, everyone was hyped. After all, no one in Kyushu was going to steal a lesson like Su Fu's Sacred Heart technique. Maybe they could learn this body training stuff. Chapter 86, A Buff Bodybuilder. The birthplace of Zhao, Kyushu, everyone gazed up at the heavenly Dao Golden List, a little hopeful, a super strong bodybuilder. Now they were pretty sure that's what Zhao had to be. How else could he block thousands of ice blades with just a wave of his hand? How else could he punch the Grand Master Su Fu so hard he was coughing up blood and falling apart? And even if they couldn't copy him exactly, they could definitely learn some tricks. Especially the strong guys who specialized in physical training, they were stoked. One of their own had become a Grand Master. How could they not be excited? De Qin, Zhongtai Palace. Body training. Looking at Zhao, who looked like he was about to pass out, Yingyun paused. But why can't I feel any energy or blood? Any strong person above the 9 provinces who'd mastered body refining would have amazing energy and blood. Just standing near them would make you feel like you were in the wilderness. It would be terrifying. But body training also had some major downsides. Boxing is for young men. Once you hit a certain age, your body just isn't what it used to be. Plus, working out all year round could make old injuries flare up. Once they got old, these guys were on their own. And even if you refined your body to the max, you could only use your energy and blood to fight. Compared to the strong people who practice Qi, they were at a disadvantage in battle. That's why there weren't many people in the 9 provinces who went that route. The effort just wasn't worth it. But now, was there a bodybuilder on this peerless list? And in the top 3? That was a surprise. Maybe he hides his energy and blood and only lets it out at the right time. Guy Nye frowned. When Zaiyozi punched, I felt an indescribable aura of terror. He guessed that maybe Zaiyozi looked so skinny to save energy, he figured that his body was actually packed with blood and energy. This. Zhongtai Palace fell silent. Then, everyone nodded. Right. After Guy Nye dropped that truth bomb, everyone's eyes lit up. Zaiyozi must be hiding his qi and blood. Even if he looked weak now, when he unleashed that energy, even a Grand Master would be in trouble. He may lead but not release, this may give some inspiration to the strong people in Jojo body training. Yingyun agreed, but he was thinking bigger, there were bodybuilders in the Great Qin army. Some sergeants were even studying those techniques. On the battlefield, a strong body was sometimes more important than strong qi, plus, it made it easier to stay alive. And now, if Zaiyozi really was a bodybuilder, then the Great Qin army could adopt some of his skills. Oh, seeing almost everyone agreeing with Guy Nye, Yingyun rolled his eyes, condensed but not released, hiding qi and blood. That was a good path for bodybuilders. But Zaiyozi was more than that. When the Tiandao Golden List said Xiaoyao sect, Yingyun remembered something about Zaiyozi, this dude was complicated. Lingbo Weibu, Xiao Wuxian Gong, Everlasting Eternal Spring, he had some seriously famous skills. And that wasn't all. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Eyes narrowed, Yingyun watched Zaiyozi sprawled on the steps in the picture, Zaiyozi had something else going on, he was a big deal. Lu Bang took a deep breath, setting aside the Emperor Shitian business for now, as an emperor, he knew the value of physical conditioning techniques, especially for the military, it was a game changer. Send out the order. All soldiers are to monitor the Heavenly Tao Golden List at all times. Taking another deep breath, Lu Bang's gaze swept over Yingbu, Fan Kuai, and the others. Disobey, and you die. Yes, sir. Fan Kuai and the others didn't hesitate, Daming, Zhu Yuanzhang watched Zhu Di leave in silence, then turned his solemn gaze back to the Heavenly Tao Golden List. If Zaiyozi was a physical training master, all of Kyushu could learn from his methods, that'd be a win for every dynasty. But it also meant that the one who mastered the essence best would boost their dynasty to the next level, fall behind, and you'd be left in the dust. But is this Taoist really focused on physical training? Zhu Yuanzhang's face showed a trace of hesitation. Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, everyone was glued to the figure in the sky, Tianmen. Only 3rd place, Zaiyozi took a swig, his eyes flickering as he glanced at the Heavenly Tao Golden List. A smile spread across his face. Guess there are some hidden powerhouses in Kyushu. Just wondering how strong number 1 really is. Honestly, I'm curious. He looked up, a touch of nostalgia in his eyes, memories. The image of Tianmen on the screen began to ripple, then, a different scene took over, *ding, a bell rang softly, sending ripples through the air, the sound echoed on the Heavenly Tao Golden List, and it echoed in the ears of everyone in Kyushu, a solemn sound. Here we go, everyone tensed at the sound of the bell. Finally, Zaiyozi's story was about to unfold, all eyes in Kyushu turned skyward as mountains and rivers materialized on the screen, finally settling on the foot of a sprawling mountain range. Smoke curled from a kitchen chimney, a Taoist temple. But a seriously dilapidated one. Chapter 87, 7-year-old Grandmaster. Kyushu stunned at the foot of the Green Mountains, smoke billowed from a Taoist temple. The bell had come from here, but the place was a wreck, even the door was rotting away, easily a century old, the courtyard was overrun with weeds. A corner of a water tank was broken off, moss grew everywhere, but the steps of the temple were spotless, otherwise, everyone would have thought it was abandoned. Time for morning practice. After ringing the bell, an old voice broke the silence, an old Taoist appeared on the steps. Okay, That a clear voice echoed through the sky as the heavenly Tao golden list showed a boy of 7 or 8. The boy struggled to put down a bell bigger than his arm, dusting off his hands and nodding seriously. Got it, old man, that he shot a disgruntled look at the steps. And how many times have I told you? Don't step on my bed. Humph, that the boy was full of childish indignation, clearly upset with the old Taoist using the steps. Those were his steps. Kyushu was speechless. Did you have to be that broke to use stone steps as a bed? Or was it just a quirk? Everyone couldn't help but remember Zayayozi sleeping on the ground. You little rascal. The old Taoist shook his head at the boy's grumbling, but he stepped down. Can't you just call me master? Nope, that the boy ran over to the steps, grabbed a broom, and swept meticulously. After finishing, he looked up at the old Taoist, counting on his fingers. You don't know the Taoist scriptures as well as I do. You don't understand them as well, either. You're not as good as me in a fight. And you can't even debate as well as I can anymore. Why should I call you master? The boy listed his reasons seriously. It was endearing, and the Dao Zong he mentioned, everyone took it as a joke. No way a 7-year-old knew more about Taoism than an old Taoist. Even a wise man would struggle with that stuff. The boy wouldn't even be able to catch up if he'd been learning since birth, but some people in Kyushu took the boy's words seriously. They still thought he was boasting, but they were taken aback. They couldn't gauge his strength. How could that be? In Kyushu, as long as you were one level higher, you could get a rough idea of your opponent's level, unless the boy knew a special technique, or his strength was way beyond theirs. Either way, it was outrageous. How old was this kid? The Qin Zhongtai Palace. Gai Nye, the boy's strength. Yingyun's eyes fixed on Gai Nye, noticing the swordsman's shock. You can't even tell, that if Gai Nye couldn't read the boy, then either he had a special body, or he knew a mysterious technique to conceal his true energy. No. Gai Nye shook his head. I do know his strength. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gai Nye swallowed hard, more shocked than he'd ever been. Kindness, Yingyun frowned, surprised. What level is that? Could it be innate? What? Yingyun's words snapped everyone to attention. They watched Gai Nye, noticing something was definitely off. Even if he was slow to react, what could shock a sword master like Gai Nye so deeply? Was it possible, as the emperor suggested, that this little Taoist was an innate powerhouse? To be born with such power at 7 or 8 years old, that was insane. Maybe Gai Nye was just floored by the kid's talent, but still, this seemed like a bit much. Seeing Gai Nye's horrified expression, many shook their heads, thinking it had to be an overreaction. Sure, innate talent at that age was mind-blowing. But after Zayayozi's earlier performance, it wasn't that surprising. The kid was a genius, after all. No. Not innate. Just when everyone thought Gai Nye was making a mountain out of a molehill, his trembling voice echoed in front of Zhongtai Palace, laced with disbelief. He's a grandmaster. A grandmaster? Boom. Gai Nye's declaration dropped like a bomb. Silence descended over Zhongtai Palace. A grandmaster. Everyone was stunned, totally speechless. The little Taoist in front of them was actually a grandmaster. No way. Disbelief was the first reaction. Impossible. Innate talent at 7 or 8 was already pushing the limits of belief. A grandmaster, in the martial arts world, could found a sect and lead a generation. Every dynasty would treat them like royalty, with the utmost respect. Even the mightiest empire would shower them with honors. That was the power of a grandmaster. They were the elite, the top of the pyramid, no matter where they went. But in a 7 or 8-year-old kid? It was just too much to swallow. It's true, a grandmaster. Even Yingyun was momentarily speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief. The land of Kyushu was a breeding ground for heroes and turbulent waves. But had anyone ever heard of a grandmaster who looked like he should still be in grade school? Chapter 88. Emperor Shetian suddenly feels insecure. This wasn't just a Qin's reaction either. There were powerful figures across Kyushu, especially within the major dynasties. Their foundations ran deeper than anyone could guess. Almost instantly, everyone recognized the Taoist boy's strength, and then, they all lost it. A grandmaster. A grandmaster at 7 or 8. This was beyond the pale. Who could believe that the grandmaster realm, which was so rare, and the dream of countless martial artists, had manifested in a child? Big Han Dynasty, Weiyang Palace. Is this a sign of doom? Liu Bang froze, a look of utter disbelief on his face when he heard the news. His first instinct was to deny it, a 7 or 8-year-old Taoist grandmaster. No way. But as more and more reports flooded into Weiyang Palace, Liu Bang finally had to accept the truth. A grandmaster, truly a grandmaster. Ming Dynasty, Forbidden City. Are we seeing things right? Zhu Yuanzhang was equally dumbfounded, staring at the information in front of him. When did achieving the grandmaster realm, rare even in the most powerful empire, become so easy? Genius? Prodigy? Those words didn't even begin to describe this kid monster. The thought flashed through Zhu Yuanzhang's mind: if he had to pick a word, monster was the most fitting. Looking at the incredibly cute little Taoist boy, counting with his fingers on the heavenly Tao golden list, Zhu Yuanzhang felt a chill down his spine. What kind of creature was this? Tang Dynasty. National teacher, is he really a grandmaster? Despite the detailed reports, Li Shimin looked at Yuan Tiangang and asked, choosing each word carefully, a 7 or 8-year-old grandmaster. It was just too bizarre. Li Shimin felt he'd seen everything, weathered the worst storms, even the Xuanwu Gate incident. He thought he was beyond surprise, but hearing this news, his mind was reeling. Yes. Yuan Tiangang's hands shook slightly. The divination tools fell to the floor. He sighed. And he is 7 years old, a grandmaster. Using his divination skills, Yuan Tiangang had calculated the Taoist boy's specific age, 7 years old. Boom! The entire Tang dynasty fell silent. He was really only 7. At that moment, dynasties across Kyushu were in shock. Some of the smaller nations couldn't verify the Taoist boy's strength, but most had gotten a word, and the reaction was uniform: dead silence. Tianmen. Emperor Shi Tian stared, dumbfounded, at the flashing screen of the heavenly Tao golden list. A grandmaster himself, but one who'd relied on a long lifespan, drugs, and phoenix blood. Emperor Shi Tian tried to remember what he was doing at 7 or 8, stealing, getting caught, and getting his butt hooped. If he remembered correctly, the corner of Emperor Shi Tian's mouth twitched. He glanced at Zaiyozi, who was sprawled on the steps, almost asleep. He suddenly felt insecure. A 7 or 8-year-old grandmaster, and judging by the Taoist kid's innocent demeanor, he probably hadn't had any formal training, just been studying Taoist scriptures. And still reached grandmaster level? Emperor Shi Tian's confidence wavered. What kind of monster was this Zaiyozi? As Emperor Shi Tian's mind raced, Zaiyozi rolled over, facing him. Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Emperor Shi Tian's face went dark, and he instinctively channeled his sacred heart art. Was Zaiyozi about to attack? Burp! Just as Emperor Shi Tian braced himself for a fight, Zaiyozi's face flushed, and he let out a satisfied burp. Then, his head lolled, and he fell back asleep. Emperor Shi Tian was dumbfounded. His face alternated between blue and white as terrifying energy surged within him. He almost unleashed the Sacred Heart's 4 tribulations. But finally, he took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed his anger. Turning away, he refused to look at Zaiyozi. Emperor Shi Tian knew if Zaiyozi goaded him like that again, he'd break his promise and attack, no matter what. He swore it. Of course, Emperor Shi Tian wasn't the only one affected. Throughout the martial arts world, many sects were stunned. Unlike the dynasties of Kyushu, obsessed with conquest and building armies, these sects focused on individual power. From the moment they were born, their goal was to become masters, yet most of them would never even get close. And now, this 7 or 8-year-old Taoist kid was a great master. What's more, the most shocking part was that this kid didn't just practice, but also studied the Daozang. After witnessing the Taoist boy's true nature, no one doubted that he was just bragging about the Daozang. Even if you couldn't fully grasp the scriptures, you'd at least understand some of the underlying principles, but even that was mind-blowing. The kid was only 7 or 8 years old. Even if he'd started training in the womb, this shouldn't be possible. Compared to Zaiyozi, everyone else might as well pack it in. Seeing him was just embarrassing. While everyone in Kyushu was reeling, the Heavenly Tao Golden List continued its broadcast. The old Taoist seemed used to the little boy's serious finger-wagging. Enough nonsense. I'm your master. He flicked the boy on the head, adding. Get back to practice. Humph. Old geezer, you want to get punched? Rubbing his head, the boy shook his fist, threatening the old Taoist. Normally, a kid waving his fists would be cute, but when that kid was a master, the atmosphere got a little tense. Chapter 89, Daozang. What kind of monster is this kid? Kyushu was silent. Everyone watched the 7 or 8-year-old, rubbing his head and waving his fist at the old man, looking fierce. Normally, it would be dismissed or found cute, but knowing the boy was a master, everyone felt a bit uneasy. They were almost sweating for the old guy. That fist might be small, but it packed enough punch to take down a strong master, and the old Taoist was obviously not a master. However, what everyone expected didn't happen. You still want to eat? The old Taoist glanced at the boy, his expression unchanged. Then get to studying. He was calm, as if addressing a normal kid, not a young master, even using food as a threat. But what shocked everyone was that, after hearing this, the boy looked conflicted. Finally, he lowered his fist and nodded, defeated. Fine. He turned and went into the rundown temple. The old Taoist went to a cracked water tank, got some water, and started a fire to cook in the corner of the courtyard. Everything was natural, as if both were accustomed to the life and didn't find anything odd about it. It was routine. Was that it? Everyone was confused, but on second thought, it made sense. The boy had probably been adopted by the old man. So, it was possible. Just when everyone was catching their breath after witnessing the conflict's quick resolution, the golden list flashed, showing the inside of the temple. What's this? Stepping inside, a different atmosphere washed over everyone. Inside the seemingly dilapidated temple, rows of huge bookshelves stood neatly arranged. They were spotless and clean, and the bookshelves were packed with thick, ancient books. Daozang. Everyone in Kyushu was stunned, especially Taoist cultivators. Their eyes shone, and they wished they could cross into the golden list and rush inside. So much. More Taoist treasures than any other temple in Kyushu today. Daozang was a general term for Taoist scriptures. The content was complex, and the volume was voluminous, including Taoist classics, treatises, scientific precepts, talismans, spells, fasting rituals, praises, places, records of gods, and biographies of Taoist figures. The number was countless. But due to war and other reasons, many Daozang were incomplete. Even today, many Taoists contributed their collections, but it was still incomplete. This was a tragedy for any cultivator. Studying Taoism improved their minds and played a role in their cultivation. The Daozang was the inheritance of Taoism, valued more than Buddhist scriptures. Seeing so many lost treasures filled them with excitement. If some Taoists found out about this temple, it would become a holy place for them. The way is born from nothingness, hidden in all spirits, unknowable. Spirit is concentrated in the void, wonderful and ever-changing, yet directionless. The boy picked a book, hugged it close. It was almost bigger than he was, moved it aside, and began chanting. His voice wasn't loud, even a little impatient, but everyone clearly heard him reciting the Shanqing Great Cave Sutra. This complete version was lost, but many sects still pieced together a rough idea. As soon as he started, everyone knew the Taoist treasure he was reciting. Dadong Jinjing, first of the Taoist sutras of the Qin Dynasty. On Wudong Mountain, Zhang Sanfeng narrowed his eyes, his face solemn. This sutra is extremely complicated, elusive, and hard to grasp. Many people in Kyushu never understand even a little bit of it in their lifetime. This boy, Zhang Sanfeng frowned, shocked, and murmured. Has he grasped 3 or 4 points? Zhang Sanfeng was a Shaolin disciple in his youth but enlightened on Wudong Mountain and belonged to Taoism. He had devoted himself to the study of the Daozang. Taoism was Taoism, and he understood it. He understood 70 or 80% of the great cave scripture. Judging from the pauses and the boy's tone, he understood 2 or 3 points. Incredible. How old was he? And he was a master. What kind of monster was this kid? Even Zhang Sanfeng couldn't help but tremble, feeling incredulous. Elsewhere in Kyushu, Taoists also noticed something was unusual in the boy's recitation. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even though they're no Zhang Sanfeng, they can still tell how deep this kid gets Dao Zun. Just from his movements, you can guess he understands Dao Zun better than some Taoist masters. Way better than them, at least. Could it be that the kid was just showing off before? After a beat, everyone remembered the kid's chat with the old Taoist priest, and they couldn't help but grimace. He's a master this, Daozong that. What kind of freak is this? Even as the kid settled in, his face no longer showing impatience, but really focusing on the Taoist scriptures, everyone saw something truly mind-blowing. Refining the gods and meeting the Tao, the auspicious wind inspires them. There is something in nothing, and the breath disperses the forms of all gods. As the kid chanted, a faint glow appeared around him. In the dim temple, it was super noticeable. What the heck is that? Chapter 90. Zhang Sanfeng's headed to Tianmen. Kyushu's minds are blown again. Everyone in Zhozhou was tripping out again. Most people had no clue what was going on, but some of the Taoist masters who knew their Tao Zong stuff, stared with their jaws dropped, totally baffled. Especially when they realized it wasn't just a glow. Taoist runes were popping up, one by one, barely visible like shimmering light. Then, everything swirled around the kid, enveloping him. Is this, aligning with the Tao? That thought popped into everyone's head, and they were completely floored. That kind of connection is something most people chasing the Tao only dream about. They treat it like a legend. And now, it's happening right in front of them. With a 7 or 8-year-old kid, unbelievable. Thump. Just as everyone in Zhozhou was speechless, the kid frowned and shoved aside the Shangqing big hole scripture. What's he doing? Everyone was stunned. Getting into that aligned with the Tao zone is what every monk wants, but can't even imagine. Why would the kid just give it up? Just when everyone was scratching their heads, even wondering if the kid was nuts, the kid glanced at the bookshelf and grabbed another Taoist book with a grunt. The Trinity of Fu Niwen Heavenly Emperor is the spiritual sect of one body, the life root of hundreds of gods, the source of body fluids, and the jade chamber of soul essence. The kid went right back to chanting, his voice echoing on the golden list. That's Taishang Suling. Listening to the words, some monks in Kyushu finally caught on and recognized it, but nobody understood why the kid ditched the great cave scripture. The benefits of connecting with the Taoist lineage of your ancestors are so huge, they drive any Taoist crazy. But before they could say anything, around the kid's body, more Taoist patterns were shimmering, glowing softly. Then, they were speechless. They were even doubting their own eyes. How is that even possible? Wudong Mountain. Zhang Sanfeng watched the kid reciting the scriptures, a serious look on his face, and he went quiet. Daozong. That represents the life's work of people who really got the Tao. For Taoist practitioners, it's as valuable as any martial arts secret, even more so. You can tell by how some Taoists would rather give up martial arts secrets than Taoist texts. Plus, Daozong isn't just about experience. If you can grasp the real meaning and get in a similar headspace as the author, Taoist runes will appear. That means the author's giving you their stamp of approval. But it's crazy hard to do. First, the Daozong has to be the real deal, written by the person who came up with it. Then, you gotta be in sync with their mindset. The first part's hard, but doable. Sure, many Daozong have been copied or ruined in wars, and the originals are lost, but some originals survive. Especially in old Taoist sects, where they usually keep a few original treasures. But getting in the same headspace as the author. That's wild. Anyone who can write a Taoist text that gets praise like that, must be truly enlightened. That's rare as hen's teeth in Kyushu. And here's the thing, everyone sees Tao a little differently, and the more you learn, the bigger those differences get, until they're totally unfixable. So for this kid to just pick up a book and connect with it, he's a straight-up genius. Even Zhang Sanfeng had to admit it, this kid's gonna be trouble. Then, Zhang Sanfeng realized that the Heavenly Tao Golden List was showing a past scene. Looks like the kid's all grown up. Yuan Xiao, watch over Wudong for me. Zhang Sanfeng paused, glanced at Song Yuanxiao standing nearby, and said calmly. I gotta head out for a bit. You're leaving? Song Yuanxiao and the other disciples were shocked, they couldn't believe it. Master hadn't left the mountain in forever. They could barely remember him leaving Wudong. Even if he did, he came back quick, but now, the master's handed all Wudong stuff to Song Yuanxiao, that means he'll be gone for a while. On a long trip? Master, wherever you're going, let us come with you. Song Yuanxiao and the other Wudong's 7 heroes spoke up without hesitation. No. Zhang Sanfeng shook his head, his eyes showing a bit of seriousness. Looking at the sky, he said softly. You can't go where I'm going this time. Whoosh, star. Before the Wudong's 7 heroes could react, Zhang Sanfeng took off, pumping his qi and heading towards the foot of Wudong Mountain. Master. The 7 heroes of Wudong were stunned, glancing at the picture on the Heavenly Tao Golden List. Then, an idea hit them. Could it be that Master's going to find the kid? No. Master's going after Zaya Tianmen. They remembered the battle between Emperor Shi Tian and Zaya at the Tianmen, and they felt a chill. Damn. If the Master's going there, they'd just get in the way. They'd only slow Zhang Sanfeng down. That's a war between the big dogs. Even a grandmaster can't hang. And Zhang Sanfeng's departure was just a blip for Jojo. The pictures on the sky list kept rolling, the kid was still hitting the books. He'd check out this one for a bit, touch that one for a bit, but every time he dug into a new Taoist book, Taoist runes would pop up, no matter what, sometimes a lot. Sometimes not so much, but they always showed up. The craziest part was, sometimes the kid barely knew the scripture, he'd stumble over the words, but still, the marks came out. At first, everyone was totally dumbfounded by it. But now? Who cares anymore? Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Daozang? Ha! That's all there is to it. Chapter 91, War. Which dynasty was Xiao Daotong from? Everyone in Kyushu is just completely over this Daozang stuff. They couldn't wrap their heads around why Daozang, which seemed to mean so little to them, was so head over heels for that little Taoist kid. If it was just that he understood Dao Zun better than they did, that'd be one thing. Then, even if they were a little bummed, they couldn't really complain, they'd just have to admit he was better than them. But here's the thing, they were clearly seeing Taoist treasures that the kid didn't even recognize, like, some stuff he couldn't even read, but it was still reacting to him. That's messed up. Seeing that was like a punch to the gut. They were racking their brains trying to figure out what was going on. Xiao Yao, Chow time. That just when countless cultivators in Jojo were about to lose it from the torment, a quiet voice floated in, click. The beat-up door of the Taoist temple creaked open, the old-timer shuffled into view. Phew, seeing the old Taoist, some Taoist priests in Kyushu felt a wave of relief. Finally, no more Daozang. Non-Taoists just figured the kid was a super genius, some kind of freak of nature. But only the gods knew what a blow this was to the actual Taoist practitioners. Some seasoned Taoists, guys who were considered Taoist masters, were ready to jump in the river from shame. It was just too much. They'd spent their whole lives, nearly a century, and couldn't get a nod from a Taoist canon, but this kid, 7 or 8 years old, just rattles off a few lines and gets the stamp of approval. Sometimes he doesn't even have to read, just flips through it, and bam, Dao patterns appear. How's anyone supposed to compete with that? Exhausting. Just scrap it all. Of course, what the people of Jojo were thinking didn't affect the Heavenly Tao Golden List. The old Taoist spoke, and the kid's face lit up, like he'd been sprung from jail. Without a second thought, he slammed the Dao Zong shut and bolted out, happy as a clam, and wouldn't you know it, faint Dao patterns started glowing on the Daozang, clear as day, almost solidifying into actual words. You could tell that if someone really understood them, even a master could take it to the next level, but this kid just didn't care at all, he was just happy to eat. That made a lot of folks in Kyushu want to weep. Thankfully, the screen flickered, the Daozong faded out, and the small, worn courtyard came back into view, and the mood of many Taoists in Jojo instantly improved. Finally, it was over. When they first saw so many Daozangs, everyone was pumped, so the Taoist teachings of Kyushu hadn't been lost, after all. Even knowing they couldn't touch the stuff, they were still eager to soak it all in, but now, after the little Taoist kids' display, the last thing they wanted to see was those Daozangs, pure torture. Is there another war going on? Right then, the kid, who was scarfing down his food, looked up, swallowed, and asked the old Taoist, war. That gave everyone in Kyushu a jolt. Was this kid living in a time of war? You see, when they first saw the Taoist temple, everyone in Kyushu was dying to know where it was. All those Taoist treasures were an insane amount of wealth. Even for Taoist practitioners, it was more tempting than becoming a master. Enough to drive you nuts. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find a single clue. The Heavenly Tao Golden List wasn't giving up any info. Just a green mountain and a shabby Taoist temple. Some even wondered if the temple was even still around after all these years. It was all a big question mark. But now, hearing the kid mention war, their hearts skipped a beat. Kyushu, these days, was pretty peaceful, even if the different dynasties squabbled now and then. But if they could pinpoint the kid's era and connect it to a specific war, wouldn't that make it easier to find the Taoist temple? That got everyone in Jojo pretty excited. Even if they were skeptical that the temple was still around after all this time, or that the treasures were still there, untouched. But what if they were? Even a book or two would be an unimaginable treasure for the Taoist cultivators of Kyushu. So, when the kid said war, some Taoist priests who didn't normally care about politics started ordering their disciples around. Get me every bit of info you can find on the different dynasties and their territories. Some of the more impatient guys went straight to the capitals of the smaller dynasties and started talking to the emperors, making promises, and they managed to get some basic intel about the major dynasties in recent years. Some dynasties already had a head start. All they had to do was look through their recent records to find out what wars had taken place in different parts of Kyushu. Of course, Daozong wasn't as important to the dynasties, but if they could get promises from the Taoist priests around the world, or even use the Daozong as a carrot to recruit them, that would be a total win. So the whole of Jojo, from the underground scene to the ruling dynasties, was buzzing. All because of a single word from the kid. After he said it, the old Taoist didn't even answer, just flicked the kid on the head. End of discussion. Naturally, that made the kid pout, and he shook his fist to show he meant business, but the old Taoist just ignored him. The kid was mad, and probably stronger than the old-timer, too, but all he could do was sulk and fume because he couldn't actually do anything about it. That scene gave everyone a better picture of the two Taoists, the old one and the young one. You could tell the kid really looked up to the old Taoist. They were like master and apprentice, or maybe even grandpa and grandson. So, even if the kid was strong, he couldn't really boss the old Taoist around. A lot of the time, he just had to do as he was told. The scenes on the gold list kept rolling. The kid was still studying the Taoist canon, and the old Taoist only left the temple once in a while, spending the rest of his time with the kid. Just when everyone thought they were settled into a quiet life at the temple, something unexpected happened. Chapter 92, War Everywhere. The old Taoist goes down the mountain. War. The kid had mentioned it over dinner a while back, but the old Taoist had shut that down pretty quick. They hadn't brought it up since. The people of Jojo had figured that the war was probably some minor squabble between small dynasties, nothing too serious, and it didn't seem to be affecting the kid and the old Taoist's lives at all. They were still living the same monotonous life, day in, day out. But now, when the old Taoist told the kid, face grim, not to leave the temple without permission, the people of Jojo remembered that the war was still on. Even though the Heavenly Tao Golden List clips went by fast, each day was still clear. You could at least tell the year and month. They started doing the math. It looked like, maybe half a year had passed. Give or take a little, but roughly right. Half a year. A fight between dynasties can take years to sort out. But for smaller dynasties, it's often over in days, or maybe a couple of weeks, tops. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Half a year's gone by, and the war's not letting up, it's actually heating up. Does this mean at least 2 major dynasties are at each other's throats? Right then, a bunch of thoughts about the power struggles across the land flashed through everyone's heads, especially the big dynasties, but there are just so many dynasties out there. Hard to tell who's who based on that alone. Everyone was still scratching their heads about something else too. That kid was a master, right? Okay, 1 or 2 masters aren't gonna swing a war between dynasties, trying to muscle and could even get you killed. But a master can usually steer clear of a fight without breaking a sweat. So why did the old guy have the kid hiding out instead? Folks stared at the golden list, full of questions, but all they could do was watch the show. War was coming, like a storm cloud rolling in. Even in that little rundown temple nestled in the green hills, you could feel the chill in the air. The old priest still went out now and then, but he'd come back covered in dust, or even blood. The kid kept bugging him to tag along, but the old man wouldn't budge. That's when everyone got the lowdown on the kid's deal. Yeah, he was a master, but that was only because he'd been hitting the Taoist text since he could crawl, and all that spiritual energy had kind of forced him into that state. He had the title, but he was clueless about fighting or any kind of martial arts. Truth be told, he didn't have much power. The energy inside him was just the leftovers from all those fancy Taoist artifacts. He was basically the weakest grandmaster ever, that even Emperor Shi Tian, who juiced up to become a grandmaster, was tougher than this kid. Of course, nobody could deny the kid had off-the-charts talent. But luckily, things were still quiet. Phew, big shots all over breathed a sigh of relief, feeling lighter. He was still just a normal kid. That's what they were all thinking, after absorbing all those Taoist writings. Who knew how the kid would turn out? Without the golden list, they might have been ready to build him a shrine, thinking he was some kind of Taoist god in disguise. Finally, they could relax. But just as everyone was starting to chill, the scene changed again, and the old priest went out again. Only this time, he brought someone back with him. A girl. Young, maybe 15 or 16, with a dirty face and scared eyes. You're safe now. Seeing how jumpy she was, the old man actually said a few words. Then he told the kid to rustle up some grub and clear out the storage room for her. Then he turned around and walked right back out, first time he'd ever left after coming back to the temple. The kid wanted to ask what was up, but he just sighed. Be careful, old man, his voice echoed in the temple, making the old priest stop for a second, nod, and head out. With the old man gone, the kid got busy. First, he pulled out his best snacks and gave them to the girl, then he started cleaning the room himself. Usually, the kid was a lazy bum. He couldn't even be bothered to put back the Taoist junk he pulled out. The old priest always ended up cleaning up after him. But this time, he was scrubbing and tidying like crazy. He even took out his own bedding and laid it out all nice in the room. Thanks. The girl, who'd been a nervous wreck, finally calmed down a bit and whispered a thank you, barely audible, but the kid grinned back at her. Everyone watching, who was used to seeing the kid and the old man always bickering, was totally thrown. Guess he had a soft spot for girls. He was treating her way different than he treated the old priest. Of course, everyone figured he just didn't want to add to the girl's pain after what she'd been through, but seeing this kid, who usually acted like a troublemaker, suddenly acting like a sweet little boy was pretty hilarious. The scene flashed again. As night fell, the old priest finally came back. But he was in rough shape. He was clearly hurt, with a gash on his chest from what looked like a blade. Blood was soaking through his ratty old robe, and he wasn't alone this time either. He brought back 300 people, men and women, young and old, all helping each other along, standing in front of the temple in the fading light. Chapter 93, Unifying the Land. Foreign invasion. The old priest was hurt. Badly. Almost dead, and he'd brought back hundreds of people, all in rags, just like that girl. with scared eyes, looking around like they expected trouble, but when they saw it was just a kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, in the whole temple, they seemed to relax a little. Then they all found a place to huddle down. You could see they were beat, almost numb. They just huddled in a corner, waiting to see what would happen next. War. Watching all this, folks across the land got serious. Dynasties were always fighting it out. For land, for power, there was almost always a war going on somewhere. Not even now, when things were relatively peaceful, the big dynasties were still scrapping along the borders. And the small dynasties? Forget about it. Countries rising and falling, it was constant. War was just part of life. And who knew how many people were uprooted and terrified because of it? So seeing these refugees, fleeing in fear, hit a nerve with a lot of people, but everyone knew there was no way to make the land completely peaceful. Not unless some dynasty could unite everyone. But nobody was strong enough to pull that off. Great Qin, Zhongtai Palace. War, it's the people who suffer. Yingyun sighed, thinking back to the 7 warring states, Qin, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhao, Wei, and Qi. Back then, the people of those 7 states suffered so much. Qin was just stuck in a corner, barely holding on thanks to the natural barrier of Hanggu Pass. Back then, Wei was strong and right next to Qin. They kept invading, trying to break through Hanggu Pass and push Qin back into Longxi. If that had happened, Qin would have been done for. Luckily, his ancestor, Duke Xiao, listened to Shang Yang and started making changes. And then came King Huiwen, King Wulie, King Zhaoxiang, King Zhuangxiang, generations of smart rulers and smart advisors, making friends in far-off lands and attacking those close by. That's how Yingyun was able to lay the groundwork for uniting the 7 states, how the king of Qin swept the world, united the land, and established the supreme dynasty. But compared to all the dynasties out there, the 7 states were nothing. And there were so many great rulers and warriors out there. Han, Ming, Tang, Song, every one of those dynasties had amazing emperors. And countless talented generals and advisors. Unifying everyone was just a pipe dream. Yingyun could only sigh, powerless to change things. Han Dynasty, Weiyang Palace. I just wonder where that is, Lu Bang muttered, a hint of curiosity in his eyes.